Hello. We'll be making many videos over the next few days because one will be in Idaho and two just too busy packing and getting ready for the lecture. Ooh, I twisted my back somehow. I think like my digital fireplace keeping me warm. Specifically, I'll be talking about a lot of things in the lecture. I only have 90 minutes. Of that, really, there's only 60 minutes for the lecture. The rest is demonstration of the supercell, showing people how to make one, answering questions, and then there's like a roundtable discussion of questions on Sunday with Eric Dollard, myself, and Aaron Murakami, which I didn't even know about until someone told me. But I mean, humans have been playing around with lodestones now for thousands of years. We know that for certain, and using them as medium for navigation, compass needles. But we have thousands of years of misconceptions. I have every book ever written on the topic of magnetism. The only dismal thing about modern science is it's never defined what a field is. A field is really simple. Of course, it's an ether perturbation. Modalities of expression are no different than, a pathetic child thinking that water is one thing, ice is another, and steam yet another thing. Well, of course, it's all water. They're just different modality expressions given. As in the case of fields, modality expressions relative to their source of genesis, but of course it would be an expression of pressure in the case of fields, but in the case of water, of course, it would be temperature, obviously so, whether it be water, ice, or steam. But I mean, these are not different things. Human beings live to pigeonhole things. But specifically, there's no such thing as magnetic attraction. Magnets do not accelerate towards one another. They actually accelerate towards a null point in the medium of itself between the two objects. Magnets do not accelerate towards each other, nor is the acceleration you see in any way, shape, or form due to magnetism. Magnets don't have poles. People think that magnets are emitting magnetism. Then a magnet is defined by its magnetism. Well, that's not true either. A magnet is far more so a dielectric object than it is a magnetic one. I'll be doing lots of demonstrations, and I'll be confining myself to a lecture that I'm reading from to keep within the time parameters. I'm going to talk about magnetism endlessly until the cows come home. But then I'd go over, and then I wouldn't be able to hit on all the stuff I want to talk about. Here's a really pertinent example. This is about the closest analogy you'll ever see on Earth of a black hole, but of course it's not a black hole. Compared to a typical magnet, you notice how huge the black hole is at the center of this really powerful N55 Gauss magnet. There's also a black ring around the edge. This is looking underneath the supercell of an N55 Gauss cylinder magnet, which is a 3/4 inch by 1/2 inch thick. The reason why this dielectric portal is so huge is that a more powerful magnet has far greater dielectric acceleration. The magnetic field itself is also palpably smaller, spatially smaller. And to say magnetism and to say creates space and to say creates time, these are all one and the same thing. This is what defines force and motion. The extrinsic nature of the Magneto-Dielectric conjugate geometry that defines what magnetism is and its relationship to the dielectric. These are like the inseparable conjugate twins. We say Siamese twins, and we say conjoined twins. Doesn't matter what you call it. These are two and one and the same thing. We're just looking at water versus ice. Say, well, here's water, here's ice. Human beings are fascinated with the ice in the case of magnetism, while the dielectric is, fundamentally the exact same thing, except the expression of loss of inertia manifests as this expanding and contracting circle. But it's not a two-dimensional circle, it's actually a force vector. And it's not really a circle. The only reason we can call it a circle is because the interplay between the centrifugal divergent magnetism and the centripetal convergent dielectric, where they're reintegrating magnetism back to the dielectric. They interplay the pressure mediations. Everywhere you see light is magnetism. Everywhere you don't see light is the dielectric. I was trying to find an older example of like a smaller cell portal as opposed to the larger one that we see there. And I know it's down here somewhere. I actually have it on my diagram for my lecture, but not on this computer. But everything that humans fundamentally think they understand what magnetism is not true. The most anti-magnetic element, which is bismuth, which I have a lot of bismuth, if you actually place it over top of a monster magnet, it is repelled diamagnetic. You can say hates magnetism if you want to keep it really simple. It actually accelerates towards the center of the magnet because diamagnetic is translatable to dielectric, and that's why a sphere of bismuth will actually accelerate towards the center of a superhuge magnet. You can't actually tell it on a normal sized magnet because the central portion or central zone is so small it's not palpable. All you have to do is just take the ball and actually run it over the north pole or south pole of any magnet. You'll actually feel a speed bump, if you will, a point of force in motion where the actual magnetism is pushing the bismuth away from it at the centrifugal divergence. But at the center point of either side of the magnet, the bismuth will actually accelerate. Well, how could people think, well, a magnet is just emitting magnetism off of either side? Well, that's just not the case at all. That's absolutely not the case at all. There's no such thing, I'm repeating myself now, but there's no such thing as magnetic attraction. A magnet does not have poles, and magnets do not accelerate towards one another. This is a simplex look at the pressure zones on either side of any magnet. The only true magnetism is along here. You actually see the conical force vectors leading outwards, and of course at the center we actually have intermediate zones, and we actually have the inverse, 180 degrees opposite at the center point. This is where the bismuth will actually accelerate towards, but over here it'll actually, decelerate and actually be repelled away from the edge. Well, according to conventional understanding of magnetism, this doesn't make any sense. This is how I actually applied what I know about magnetism to adapting magnetic arrays to gold sluicing devices to extract more gold. I mean, gold's diamagnetic. You can actually place magnetic arrays along the travel path of the baby powdered gold, which is usually dropped out of the back end of the gold sluicing devices, and use that to decelerate the gold out of the water flow. And then, of course, when it falls down into the wiffles, which are the collection devices in the bottom of the gold sluice, then, of course, you gather more gold. People don't understand what magnetism actually is. Magnetism is the conjoined twin other half of the dielectric. The dielectric in conjunction with the magnetic is, of course, electricity. This is exactly what the Lord and guru of electrical theory, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, himself said. Phi times psi equals Q in Planck of electrification. It's the combination of the magnetic and dielectric that actually, magnetic and the dielectric, that actually forms the electrical field. The universe, you see certain people on the electric universe and some of these other nut jobs saying everything is electrical. Well, actually, the true statement would be is everything is dielectric. Dielectric is the fundamental field modality, which in different modalities manifests as either magnetism, electricity, and gravity is not anything itself. Gravity does not exist as an autonomous field modality. It is just nothing other than incoherent, non-point source dielectric acceleration. That's all gravity is. There's an old saying that's been actually said since ancient times as well as recently, is that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. People say, what's gravity? Well, A, gravity doesn't exist. The phenomena that we call gravity is point non-specific dielectric acceleration or incoherent dielectric acceleration. It's very, very simple. That's why there's no such thing as what we call magnetic attraction and what we call gravity are the exact same goddamn thing. The only difference is the incommensurability in point source in the case of a magnet when it comes to acceleration. Here's a perfect little black hole analogy. This is the reason why, too, stupid human beings now for the past 50-some years have been arguing back and forth about what the hell a black hole is. So Stephen J. Carruthers, who's a really brilliant Australian physicist, he spends countless dozens of hours telling you why Einstein is a goddamn idiot, and he does a really good job of it in his explanation of black holes. He actually attacks two people, and I love him for it, Einstein and that pathetic little crippled guy who recently died. And, you know, I hate to say that, you know, what's his face, Stephen Hawking's? It's just an idiot. I have several of Stephen Hawking's books. He's just nothing other than an Einstein atomist. He was, anyway. But anyway, Stephen J. Carruthers attacks Einstein and Hawking's, rightly so, about their stupidity on black holes because the math doesn't work out and the premise doesn't work out and the logic is illogical. But he actually never tells you what a black hole is. All he does is spend all his time telling you that these guys are idiots. But he's correct. But all the misapprehension and misunderstanding is that the fact that none of these people, Carruthers, Einstein, nor Stephen Hawking, understood fundamentally field theory. The only way you could actually correctly explain what a black hole is by understanding field theory. This, of course, is not a black hole, but this is the most perfect analogy that will ever exist. There might be a better one created at some time in the future, of the premise of a black hole. A black hole is just something where dielectric has overthrown the magnetic. There's a very funny movie where this 400-pound woman comes in and she does a belly flop on this tiny little person, a midget little person, doesn't matter what you want to call it. And of course the little person vanishes. That's basically what happens in a dielectric, is that the only thing that any object or phenomena, any existential materiality, matter, that it actually has magnitude or Cartesian presence within the physical universe of XYZ coordinate, is due solely to magnetism. Remember when your pathetic, your idiotic teacher at least told you one thing correct? Said, well, every atom is 99.9999999% empty space. In other words, if we were to remove out all the empty space of all the matter in the Earth would be about yay big. That's actually an accurate statement. We know for a fact that every atom, doesn't matter what type of atom it is 99.9999999% not protons and neutrons. That's just a fact. But what that is, the air in the balloon, if you will, or the atomic volume measured in picometers of every atom, is magnetodielectricity. Magnetism is the air, if you will, of the balloon of every atomic structure and mass that keeps anything within the visible universe, such that it actually has magnitude. A black hole is an object who obtains to spatial coherency by the creation of iron, and we know these supermassive stars, they start to create iron, and then what happens is they generate field coherency, and then they generate point-specific, in other words, spatial coherency, just like a magnet is. When you actually charge a magnet, there's no difference. They're usually charged 2400 volts and 12 amps DC. What happens is there's no qualitative change, there's no quantitative change, there's only a qualitative change. We actually have field coherency and incommensurability in the magnet such that it now has the field and the neat field phenomena that human beings are fascinated by magnets. But there's no change before a magnet becomes a magnet and afterwards. The only difference is a qualitative change. Anyway, the qualitative change in the nature of the field dynamics of a supermassive star or a supermassive black hole is that the dielectric literally overthrows the magnetism's ability to keep that object within the visible universe. So you have something that's completely antithetical but is super logical in every way, shape, and form, and follows Occam's razor, that you have something not within the minds of any human conception, because we have nothing on Earth like that to compare it to. But we have something that is super massive, yet has no magnitude. In other words, we have a supermass, but it has no Cartesian value. If we were to actually take this to the fruition on a super macro scale, the dielectric would expand so far as that it would actually envelop the entire magnet and it would vanish from the physical universe. This is what people don't get, because people ask me, say, I bought these really powerful magnets, but the field isn't that high out. There's a buddy of mine called George Mizell. He used to own the United States' largest magnet company, and he sold it to a guy in Kentucky, oddly enough. George Mizell now actually teaches kids how to pass SAT tests. It's a lot more lucrative than selling magnets, but he used to actually get orders and requests for these super powerful super magnets. And the way he would actually do it is he'd have his plant, and he visited China, and you can find his YouTube video. Just type in one word, Super Magnet Man. It's George Mizell. He's got a really heavy country twang to him. And he actually had these pyramidal magnets with a base of 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 inches squared, and they would taper off to about 1/8 inch square at the top, and they'd reach like 1.5 Tesla Gauss flux rating. So magnets were used in medical and otherwise experimentation. What happens is the actual pyramidal magnet, the actual physical magnet, constricts the magnetism to the point, just like a fire hose. The reason you're able to get these super high pressures out of fire hoses, for example, is because they take this huge hose of water and they taper it down and down, and they funnel it down, and the water can only escape from one place, and that's a tiny portal at the end, and it escapes very violently under high pressure, and that's actually what's happening to the magnetism. This is actually the one and only time, by the way, as a side comment, where you can actually literally, no New Age crap involved, okay? No New Age or crap, crystal rubbing, pyramid power crap. This is the one time where you could actually say that pyramid power actually exists. There's only 2 types of magnetic shapes that are actually special. Only 2 types. Very special. One is the ring magnet, because the only reason why the ring magnet is special is because its shape is a torus, i.e. a donut, is the exact same shape as the magnetic field itself. When you actually create a magnet with the same shape as the magnetic field itself, special things happen, but that actually takes hours and hours to explain. And one of those is a discovery of mine that's the basis for an invention that I'm not going to talk about, but I'll suffice to say that. The other one is actually a pyramid magnet. The reason why his, and I could bring up the video, but then I probably people, maybe George Mizell would do a thing on me for showing his video, but you could simply type in the Super Magnet Man Pyramid Magnet. The guy actually has several Gauss meters. I need a Gauss meter. Someone needs to send me an old used Gauss meter. I had one for borrow on loan for a long time, and then it broke, and then I had to send it back, but now I don't have a Gauss meter. Yeah, there's no such thing as magnetic attraction. Magnets do not accelerate towards another. I'll show you that in the lecture. And it's also viewable underneath a supercell. They actually accelerate towards no point in the medium, i.e. the ether, between the two, but not towards each other. Instantaneous action at a distance is both hyper-rational and easily explainable when you actually have a medium. But when you actually have these particle fantasies, BS of current science that believes in virtual photons being emitted from a magnet, I mean, this is crap. There's no input or output of any experiment ever done with the basis of virtual photons. I mean, it's just epic BS. But polarity doesn't exist. All of these things that humans have believed about magnets and magnetism for thousands of years is 100% pure BS, bunk, crap, nonsense, twaddle, poppycock. Magnets don't have poles. Magnets do not accelerate towards one another. And there's no such thing as magnetic attraction. If I'm lying, I'm dying. I'm not certain about this. I am 1,000% certain about this. Everything in the universe is to be logical, it has to follow Occam's razor, it has to be simplicity. Simplicity is divinity. Mother Nature is not a crazy hooker on crack with a calculator. I'm not against math, I'm simply telling you that nature works off of pressure. It doesn't work off of calculations. The only reason the Divina Proporzione, as Leonardo da Vinci referred to it, exists in the universe has nothing to do with math. It has to do with pressure mediation and self-replication. The ancient Greek principle prohodos. Well, it would take a long time to translate that word. There's some Greek words that are so fascinating they're absolutely untranslatable, like ananke, logos, prohodos, epistroph, euristos dias, ananke, tolma, koros. What else? There's a list of things that are untranslatable from the ancient Greek. Specifically, the euristos dias and incommensurability. Man, it'd take hours to explain that one. To most people. To some people, they get it right off because they have very keen and sharp minds, but most people don't have that. People accuse me of using big words in these videos on field theory. It's like, oh, girlfriend, these ain't big words at all. It's like, I think like this all the time. I'm not using big words. I love it when people accuse me of using big. It's like, big words compared to who? Compared to you, maybe? They're not big words. This is actually a great analogy for what actually a black hole is. A black hole is so simple I could explain it to a child. It's like yin and yang. You know, if the yin gets so big that it overthrows the yang, it's really, really simple. But we have no concept of that in our world. We have no idea of something. Something became so massive that it vanished from the universe. It's like, well, if it's so massive, it would be more and more visible. You know, what happens is that everything is dielectric in the universe, and when you establish point-specific field incommensurability and coherency, what happens is that the dielectric overthrows magnetism, and saying magnetism and saying create space and saying force and motion and saying volume is all one and the exact same thing. When the dielectric overthrows magnetism, that means that that object vanishes from the visible universe. It is literally that simple. It is hyper logical to the nth degree. By the way, I am doing a free lecture in Idaho if anybody would love to make a donation because I'm going to be out there for a few days, you know, for food or, you know, the expense of getting here to there. That would always be lovely. That would be linked below. That would always be greatly appreciated because I am doing a free lecture, which I'm glad to do, but it's taken up a lot of time. And I have no money myself to spend while I'm out there. I certainly can't get a car rental because I don't have a credit card. The reason I don't have a credit card is because my dead wife's medical bills left me with bad credit rating. When your wife dies, it leaves you with $500,000 of medical debt. It usually destroys your credit rating. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. You have a lovely day, and I will catch you in Idaho. Maybe. Bye.